Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday. We're going to use this one on Friday, I think. And what the hell is the date going to be on Friday? I have to look ahead into the future. Good morning, everybody. It is, or will be, Friday, July 26th, 2024. Indeed, time for another show. Okay, hey, well, how did your week go? Mine's almost coming to an end. I mean, all of our weeks are coming to an end. But my week away is coming to an end. I might even be on an airplane right now. It's so high up here. This is really crazy. I'm used to being down there in my kitchen. Anyway, yes, I have a show for you today, another 1 hour special, but the kind that Scott absolutely loves / hates. It's really a hate-hate relationship. One story and one story only, but I think I actually might have a little bit of time to squeeze in something else at the end. But once I put this bumper on the front, my goodness, then most of my time is already gone. But I have something that I thought was just an astonishing story. And I scream in it a little bit. So that's good. There's some real passion involved. It had been sitting in pocket for a little while. It is a classic story of Texas screwing themselves and probably everybody else, and certainly everybody who lives in the state, in exchange for, well, in this case, money, sort of, but otherwise really next to nothing. And maybe not even money. It's very weird. It's confusing. It involves everybody's favorite topic, Bitcoin mining. Here's a story that's tailor-made for days like today. I've been saving this one for a little while. Not that long, though. July 8th of this year is the original publication date on this. It was updated not that long ago. But I've been holding it back for a Friday or a day like today, as it's not directly political, but as we know, everything is political. This one, kind of interesting, took me by surprise here. Time magazine, which by its existence, continued existence, took me by surprise, also ran this article, which took me by surprise. We're living in a nightmare. That's terrible. What a surprise. We're living in a nightmare. Why? What's the nightmare? Inside the health crisis of a Texas Bitcoin town. Wow. Well, I guess I wouldn't have guessed it necessarily off the bat, but if you asked me, I guess offhand, can you make a guess at how people's health might be doing in a Texas Bitcoin town? I don't know exactly what that is, but I would probably say, wow, Texas and Bitcoin. I don't know. Now that you mention it, I mean, I feel like you're setting me up, but bad? Anyway, so what's going on here? I'll ask a few people that I know, namely Andrew R. Chow, who did the reporting here from Granbury, Texas, for Time Magazine. Andrew, tell us a little bit about this, but use my voice to narrate it. Okay, I will. Fine. On an evening in December of 2023, 43-year-old business owner Sarah Rosencrans collapsed in her home in Granbury, Texas, and was rushed to the emergency room. Her heart pounded 200 beats per minute. Her blood pressure spiked into hypertensive crisis. Her skull throbbed. It felt like my head was in a pressure vise being crushed, she says. That pain was worse than childbirth. Rosencrans' migraine lasted for 5 days. Doctors gave her several rounds of IV medication and painkiller shots, but nothing seemed to knock down the pain, she says. This was odd, especially because local doctors were similarly vexed when Indigo, Rosencrans' 5-year-old daughter, was taken to urgent care earlier that year, screaming that she felt a, quote, remember, 5-year-old, a red beam behind her eardrums. Holy cow. It didn't occur to Sarah that these symptoms could be linked. But in January of this year, 2024, she walked into a town hall in Granbury and found a room full of people worn thin from strange, debilitating illnesses. Oh no, what's going on here? A mother said her 8-year-old daughter was losing her hearing and fluids were leaking from her ears. Several women said they experienced fainting spells, including while driving on the highway. Others said they were racked by debilitating vertigo and nausea, waking up in the middle of the night mid-vomit. Yeesh. None of them knew what exactly was causing these symptoms, but they all shared a singular grievance, and I guess this might be it. A dull aural hum, A-U-R-A-L, aural hum, had crept into their lives, which growled or roared depending on the time of day, rattling their windows and rendering them unable to sleep. The hum, local law enforcement had learned, was emanating from a Bitcoin mining facility. Somebody evil at the heart of this. That had recently moved into the area and was exceeding local legal noise ordinances on a daily basis. Over the course of several months in 2024, Time spoke to more than 40 people in the Granbury area who reported a medical ailment that they believe is connected to the arrival of the Bitcoin mine. I wouldn't have guessed that it would, A, that it would produce a sound, and B, that the sound could produce illness, but that's the suspicion. So what's going on? Hypertension, heart palpitations, chest pain, vertigo, tinnitus, migraines, panic attacks. At least 10 people went to urgent care or the emergency room with these symptoms. The development of large-scale Bitcoin mines and data centers is quite new, and most of them are housed in extremely remote places. I don't know. By the way, I live like in the middle of Data Farm Central, and I haven't noticed anything like it. I mean, here in Northern Virginia, we must have 24 of them within 5 minutes of the house. I haven't noticed any noise, and I guess Bitcoin mining is a different type of operation and maybe produces some kind of sound. But it hasn't been noticed here that just plain data centers create any nuisance beyond the fact that we have gigantic windowless buildings all over the place and it looks weird. And it eats up all the land. And now, of course, it eats up all the electricity as well. But, you know, I mean, these places are cavernous, and it may be that they're not entirely filled wall to wall with machinery, and maybe the sound is contained inside of these gigantic walls. I really don't know. But nothing like that here. But now it's got me worried. Now I'm thinking about it. I hope there's a difference between what's going on there and what's going on here. But let's continue. There have been no major medical studies on the impacts of living near one of these things, but there is an increasing body of scientific studies linking prolonged exposure to noise pollution with cardiovascular damage. And one local doctor, ear, nose, and throat specialist Salim Balu, says he sees patients with symptoms potentially stemming from the Bitcoin mine's noise on an almost weekly basis. I'm sure it increases their cortisol and sugar levels, so you're getting headaches, vertigo, and it snowballs from there, Balu says. This thing is definitely causing a tremendous amount of stress. Everyone is just miserable about it. Plus, they live in Texas. So, you know, there's a lot going on here. Dr. Balu's last name, by the way, Bhaloo, if you were interested in looking him up. Or if you happen to be in the Granbury, Texas area and have a headache, I suppose. Not all data centers make noise. Good. Okay. Well, ours don't appear to. And industry insiders say they have a technical fix for the ones that do, which involves replacing their facilities' loud air fans, we must have those on these buildings, with much quieter liquid-based cooling solutions. But some of their touted methods, including immersion cooling in oil, are expensive and untested on a large scale. A representative for Marathon Digital Holdings, the company that owns the mine, did not answer questions about health impacts, but told Time that it is working to remove the noisy fans from the site. By the end of 2024, we intend to have replaced the majority of air-cooled containers with immersion cooling, with no expansion required. Initial sound readings on immersion containers indicate favorable results in sound reduction and compliance with all relevant state noise ordinances, they wrote in an email. Before I had said that they were local ordinances, and that was just me misreading, and I think we wanted to get I had a totally different word in mind. But scrolling back, what was it we were talking about? I don't know. At any rate, legal noise ordinances, not local noise ordinances. And that now becomes important now that we know that we're talking about state noise ordinances. I wouldn't have thought of noise ordinances as a state level thing. Usually that seems like local level or county level thing. But in Texas, I guess I can see it. And I'm sure maybe there's a mandatory, overall requirement for statewide, and local officials can perhaps increase the requirements. But in Texas, the requirement is probably, hey, if anybody, complains about a corporate noise level, you should file something that says, screw you, I'm not helping you. The way Texas works. So, okay, where were we? Initial sound readings on immersion containers say, they might significantly reduce sound output and be compliant with all relevant state noise ordinances, so they won't have to write the FU letters. The number of commercial-scale Bitcoin mining operations in the U.S. has increased sharply over the last few years. There are now at least 137 of them. Similar medical complaints have been registered near facilities in Arkansas and North Dakota. And the Bitcoin mining industry, which there really shouldn't be one, is urgently trying to push bills through state legislatures, including in Indiana and Missouri, which would exempt Bitcoin mines from local zoning or noise ordinances. How about no? Or how about exempting them from prosecuting anybody for taking care of them Fight Club style? Why don't we just legislate that? Would that be okay? In May, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, one of the worst in the 50 states that we've got, as far as I'm concerned, signed a Bitcoin rights bill. Imagine giving Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners rights as against ordinary citizens who just want the quiet enjoyment of their property. He signed a Bitcoin rights bill to protect miners and prevent any future attempts to ban the industry. And by the way, why? What's the societal benefit of Bitcoin mining? And it eats up all the energy. It might enrich whoever's doing the mining. And I guess everybody has the right to invest in something that might return a profit. But if you're investing in something that returns a profit, like telephone services, and the people who subscribe to your telephone service have the ability to call friends and loved ones on the telephone. Okay, fine. I manufacture, knitted Afghans. Okay, people might need blankets. Seems like we want to encourage that industry. Bitcoin. I personally keep the money and I pay some other people. Nobody gets anything. We get money. That's it. And in exchange, we eat up all the energy and make everybody around us sick. I mean, it would be like opening a chemical plant that doesn't actually produce chemicals. It just belches smoke. Or an incinerator, for instance. I'm burning my garbage so I don't have to pay to haul it away. But what garbage is it? I don't know. Just whatever garbage I have. And I'm getting, between that and the people who down in Texas arbitrage, power production, or I think maybe even discuss it in this article. I think now that I think about it, weren't there reports that Bitcoin miners are foregoing mining during peak energy usage and instead trading them in for state credits for not putting their demands on the grid at peak times? And now you're paying people to not make a thing that isn't actually being made. I don't even know what to make of this. But, well, I guess the answer is nothing. Make nothing. There's really no reason in the world, in other words, that I can think of to use the tax system or any part of the legal system to incentivize Bitcoin mining. It doesn't make sense. It's antithetical to micro and macroeconomics. You shouldn't be doing it. Now, while some Granbury residents are fiercely protesting their mine there, many others feel powerless to alter the will of a company with legal, political, and financial might. And that's the answer. I mean, there's no societal benefit to it. That's not an issue for the legislators. They just say, look, I was asked to write this down and I would get money. And so I did. The end. So, the data center industry at large, at least they're like, well, I'm providing the data storage services that power the internet that people want to use. Now, increasingly, they're using it for AI. Draw me a picture of a clown with a blue nose and, drying up a lake worth of fresh water in order to do it. But, people want it, whatever. But the Bitcoin, some people want it, but they're not going to give it to you. They're keeping it. So that's, I think, a qualitative difference here. But anyway, the data center industry at large is only growing more dominant thanks to the twin forces of Bitcoin mining and AI, the latter of which spends a vast amount of energy training generative models to find patterns in data sets. According to a recent report, data centers will use 8% of total U.S. power by 2030, up from 3% in 2022. And really, honestly, 1% is insane. And if operators continue to locate the centers near existing communities and prioritize profits above all else, then the story of Granbury could become the story of countless small towns across America. I wonder if all the data centers in our area are using this quieter liquid cooling. Maybe. I haven't gotten close enough to one to notice that they make a noise. Or if they make a noise. I mean, I guess I am. I stop and roll down the car windows. I'm not that far off the road. Granbury sits about an hour southwest of Fort Worth in Hood County, which houses a mostly rural and Republican population of about 65,000 people. About a 15-minute drive south of Granbury's charming historic town center, which includes a 19th century opera house, lies a gas plant called Wolf Hollow 2. Sounds like a video game, actually. Driving toward the plant on a windy pre-dawn morning in May, it rises out of the sky like an oil rig in a pitch-black ocean, lights ablaze. But the glowing gas plant never caused substantial issues for the local residents. I mean, you'd think it could, but I guess it hasn't. Rather, the problem started when Constellation Energy, which operated the plant, signed a deal in 2021 to power a new Bitcoin mining facility that would sit directly on its lot. The new facility consisted of 163 squat metal boxes resembling shipping containers, which housed a total of over 30,000 computers. These computers started running in the summer of 2022 and seemed to be switched on all day and night. As of December 2023, the Granbury mine is owned by Marathon, one of the largest Bitcoin holders in the world. The computers power a process called proof-of-work mining. Rather than relying on a central bank or governmental agency, Bitcoin is created, maintained, and guarded, sometimes poorly, by watchdogs around the world known as miners, who prevent tampering through a complex cryptographic process and are rewarded with Bitcoin for doing so. Bitcoin's first supporters hoped that this new system would support a global digital currency that would bring freedom, financial fairness, and wealth to its adopters. But the system also requires an immense and ever-increasing amount of electricity. While Bitcoin's first miners were solo operators, often working out of their bedrooms, the industry is now dominated by a handful of billion-dollar corporations who operate industrial-sized server farms across the globe. Reminds me like of the IOI operation in the book and movie Ready Player One. You know, first you start this online system of the Oasis. Everybody's just supposed to kind of enjoy it as individuals and hang out there. But then somebody figures out if you pool all the resources and, you know, mine the fun on a corporate level, you can suck up lots of dollars, and who cares if you ruin it for everybody. But anyway, so now the industry has become dominated by billion-dollar operations like this. In the month of March of 2024 alone, the Bitcoin mining industry generated a record $2 billion in revenue. It's just not revenue that's, shared in any way with anybody. Maybe they spend the stuff, and I guess they pay employees. But the thing that they're making is just, digital money that they do nothing with. I don't even know. There's just no reason. Again, certainly no reason to incentivize it. If you want to make $2 billion, make $2 billion. Make it in cash and buy and spend your cash just like anything else. We already have that, and it doesn't eat up all the electricity, and it isn't hurting anyone. Yeah, but I want it to be digital. Well, I want it to be flying pizzas. Go F yourself. It's not digital. It's paper. Kiss my ass. Well, I want to be able to make untraceable purchases. Well, there's certainly no reason for us to be incentivizing that. We're a taxing authority. And I mean, by the way, get the entire F out of here if you, I'm libertarian. I want to be able to do this whole thing without governments, but I would also like a Bill of Rights and a subsidy. Why are we even talking about this? Somebody should go knock that governor out. And I mean, I guess you can say, you can't say that. Someone should go give that governor a gratuity over the head, I guess. You're not supposed to, advocate violence, but someone should educate him as to what the hell he's doing economically. Not that I think it would sink in, but that guy's name just comes up with every time there's the worst story in the world, Kevin Stitt is in it somehow. And who cares about that guy? But usually Greg Abbott is in here, and Greg Abbott comes up soon. But you can't help but, you're writing a story about something horrible? Well, Kevin Stitt will be in there eventually. And it's true. All right, where was I? Much of the American Bitcoin mining industry can now be found in Texas, because what's more welcoming to horrific BS that'll kill you for nothing than Texas? Much of it can be found in Texas, home to giant power plants, lax regulation, and crypto-friendly politicians, i.e. put the crypto in my pocket and I'll be friendly with you. I would say in October of 2021, Governor Greg Abbott, boo, get your groggers, hosted the lobby group Texas Blockchain Council at the governor's mansion. We don't want anything to do with government. Invite us to the governor's mansion. No, you're on your own. Libertarian your way out of it. The group insisted that their industry would help the state's overtaxed energy grid. I mean, again, like pleas for unity. Or, we're going to have a message of unity at the RNC. Yeah, well, we're going to help the Texas energy grid. No, you're not. How could you? All right, what's their excuse? During energy crises, miners would be one of the few energy customers able to shut off upon request. This is amazing. Provided they were paid in exchange. So what they're saying is, well, you see, if we were there using up all the energy and you needed us to stop using energy, you could pay us and we would stop using the energy. Yeah, but what about if I don't subsidize you and don't give you a Bitcoin miner's Bill of Rights and you don't build the thing and then you're not using the energy? Well, then somebody else would be using it and you couldn't encourage them to shut off in exchange for paying them. Why not? Well, because they have things to do. They're manufacturing something. We're not making anything here. I mean, it's like, this is a story custom made for bleeping. Like, we're not making crap here. All right. I can't even bring myself to it. But anyway, but other people, they're making things. You can't pay them to not make them. Yes, you can. What, are you kidding me? We don't know anything about agricultural subsidies here in Texas. Pay us to not farm something? Well, I can pay you to not make Bitcoin. Well, because who cares if I make Bitcoin? Whereas if you're making Alpo or you're making, those, the Afghans that people want, well, now you're on back order. Yeah, but I mean, why am I making Alpo and Afghans? To make money. If you're going to pay me money to not make them, and it's enough, then I won't make them, and I'll shut down. Well, what about all of my back-ordered Afghans? What about them? I'll ship them when I can start back up again, and I'll have some nice cash in my pocket until then. There's nothing special about Bitcoin except for the fact that you admit that there's no effing reason in the world why you need to keep operating. But please pay me when I don't. Holy cow. Who fell for this? I'm sorry. The answer is Greg Abbott and Kevin Stitt and Republicans in general, I guess. There's your answer. So how about that? The group insisted they were good for the energy grid because they would stop. I will be smashing you over the head with a hammer, but if you ask me to stop and give me $10, I will, and not everyone would. Thank you. It's so great. After meeting with the lobbyists, Abbott tweeted that Texas would soon be the #1 state for blockchain and cryptocurrency. After already trying to push people into... there's been a shooting. We need to be the #1 state for panic buying of guns. And also blockchain and cryptocurrency. The following month, the Commissioner's Court of Hood County approved the development of a cryptocurrency operation at Wolf Hollow. They, I'm sure, had no idea what it was. The owners promised local jobs and said they would mostly use stranded energy that would otherwise go unused. That sounds like it might not be a thing. That's pretty interesting. And of course, they'll be using local jobs. All of the unemployed oil miners can be trained as IT technicians maintaining servers, right? I mean, easy. Not easy? Oh, all right. Well, or maybe not local jobs. Maybe we'll just use H-1B visas and bring people in from out of the country to run these things for a lot less. Anyway, I'm sure they probably didn't deliver on that promise. And I don't even know what stranded energy means. I guess I can try and figure it out. Energy transmission being what it is in Texas. And aren't they like unconnected to the national grid? And that was one of the problems, one of the reasons that their energy grid goes down when there's a regional heat wave. Maybe stranded energy that's been produced and is available for consumption inside Texas, but nobody is making use of it, and it can't be shipped out of state to the interstate grid. So we'll use it. But I mean, what happens to it if you don't? I don't know. I have no idea. But no, nothing that's going to run 24/7 unless you pay us is going to be sticking with stranded energy and nothing else. For months during 2022, Granbury residents Nick and Virginia Browning sat in their front yard watching the new metal boxes of the massive facility be installed in the dirt across the road. It layered our houses with dust. We haven't gotten it all out yet, Nick Browning, now 82, says. So that must have been some fun watching them do that and ruin your house. The dust, it turns out, was just a prelude to the noise. In order to cool the machines, the site's operators attached thousands of fans to the containers, which churned constantly, emitting a vicious buzz. It's like being overwhelmed by cicadas all the time, I guess. As more machines were switched on, the noise sounded like a ceiling fan, then a leaf blower, then a jet engine. It consumed afternoon dog walks and revved through cloudless nights, vibrating the trailer homes of many of the low-income residents who live blocks from the facility. The noise floated miles down the winding Brazos River, through the lush golf courses, oh no, in the gated community of, I don't know whether they say in Texas, Pecan Plantation or Pecan Plantation, and past county lines. Ooh, an externality, everybody. At first, residents responded to the intrusion by vacating their porches, retreating inside, and turning up their fans and air conditioners to the max. But they still felt the tremors in their beds, according to Larry Potts, a 77-year-old retired pastor who lives up the road from the plant, and probably thought about tossing a couple M80s in the fans and taking them out. I wouldn't put it past him. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Potts said he stopped sleeping and started losing hearing in both ears. In February, his heart gave out after another sleepless night. He was rushed to the hospital and kept alive by an external pacemaker. And there, he was diagnosed with third-degree atrioventricular block. Wow, I hope I got that right. Hypertension and depression. And by the way, how much of that Bitcoin is he getting? 0. So part of the cooling process, we'll cool it down with fans. Yes, and other people's cardiovascular systems. What? How could that be? Well, just take a look. I mean, I know you weren't anticipating that. It's not, intuitive. But basically, you're cooling your Bitcoin mining with the bodies of your neighbors and keeping all the money. And their healthcare costs are rising and shooting through the roof, and they'll eventually drop dead from it. And you will say, it's weird that everyone around here is dead, but at least I can buy that land now and put more servers on it and kill the neighbors again until you hit the golf course and they blow you up or fight back. So how about that? Wow. I'm sick of this world and all this mess around here, he said. Who are we talking about again? We were speaking to Larry Potts, the poor gentleman who had the heart condition as a result of being left sleepless for living next to these things. I'm sick of this world and all this mess around here, he told his wife that day, referring to the Bitcoin mine's noise. We moved out here for the peace and quiet, but this has made me want to go. Some nearby residents say they haven't been affected, but the number of strange medical emergencies in the area have piled up. In addition to Potts's discharge papers, Time reviewed medical records provided by several Granbury residents. Everything's jumping around every time a new ad pops up, and it's probably, somebody's ears are blowing out somewhere with a fan going so it can serve me all these ads. But in addition to Potts's discharge paper, Time reviewed medical records provided by several Granbury residents. Hospital notes from 72-year-old Geraldine Lather's 3-day stay document new prescriptions for high blood pressure and vertigo. Jenna Hornbuckle, 38, much younger, lost hearing in her right ear and was diagnosed with heart failure. Okay. Ear exams document her hearing loss along with that of her 8-year-old daughter, Victoria, another mother-daughter combination losing their hearing, who contracted ear infections that forced doctors to place a tube in her ear. That happens with kids, I'm sure the defense attorneys would say. And Avari Burns, a 19-year-old cancer patient, says she suffered from crippling migraines at home, but whenever she went to a Fort Worth hospital for chemotherapy, the migraines subsided. Virginia Browning, 81, who can see the Bitcoin mine from her front yard, says she was taken to urgent care with violent vertigo after waking up one night mid-vomit. Browning says she gets so dizzy she can barely walk in a straight line and that she rarely sleeps through the night. When they crank this thing, she says shakily, I'm wide awake. We're living in a nightmare, Sarah Rosencrans says, sitting at a barbecue restaurant in downtown Granbury on an evening in May. As rock music blares from the speakers and other patrons chatter away, Rosencrans pulls out her phone and clocks 72 decibels on a sound meter app, the same level that she records in Indigo's bedroom in the dead of night. So rock band playing in the bar is about as loud as her daughter's bedroom. Wow. In early 2023, her daughter began waking up, yelling and holding her ears. Indigo's room directly faces the mine, which sits about 1.5 miles away. She soon refused to sleep in her own room. She then developed so many ear infections that Rosencrans pulled her from school in March and learned how to homeschool her for the rest of the semester. So, wow, jobs created. Job destroyed. Now mom has to stay home and homeschool the kids. Over grilled salmon and hush puppies, Rosencrans shares that her family has been sleeping peacefully at an inn downtown for the last 3 days in order to get away from the noise. Creating jobs in the hotel industry anyway, but costing everybody locally all their money. The next morning, though, after returning home, she contracts yet another migraine that lands her in urgent care. Dr. Balu, the ENT doctor from Granbury, says he's seen an uptick since the new year in patients whose ailments, including ringing in their ears, vertigo, and headaches, could be related to the mine. These people here, they're good country folks, and Bitcoin to them is almost a foreign alien thing, he says. Yeah, probably right. They don't understand it, and the noise is detrimental to their health and anxiety. Dr. Stephen Krasminski, I'm going to give that my best shot. Dr. Stephen Krasminski, another Granbury ENT, agrees. Sonic damage is real. There's no disputing that, he says. Krasminski says he believes the mine is causing mental and physical health issues. Imagine if I had, this goes back a ways, a vuvuzela, you remember the vuvuzela? In your ear all the time, he says. Well, Brazilians can tell you about that. The level of noise is appalling to one Dr. Thomas Munzel, a German cardiologist who is a leader in the growing field of scientific researchers measuring the impact of urban and industrial noise on humans. I was wondering where that sentence was going. The growing field of scientific researchers. Well, it is growing, but a specific kind of scientific researcher. Of course, for the last 15 years, Munzel has studied how transportation and urban noise, especially at night, can be debilitating stressors on the heart, brain, and cardiovascular systems. In one study, he exposed young, healthy students to noise levels up to 63 decibels, actually quieter than Indigo's bedroom, and found that their vascular function diminished after just a single night. In other studies, he's found that nighttime noise pollution directly leads to heart failure and molecular changes in the brain, which may lead to impaired cognitive development in children and make some people more prone to developing dementia. I've always wondered about that just in terms of even quieter white noise things, air filters, air purifiers, whatever, fans in the room. Does any level, or does it have to be super loud? I wonder. Anyhow, the European Environmental Agency, boo, old Europe, we hate them, Brexit. The European Environmental Agency tells us everything above 55 decibels is making us sick, he says. The fact that the Granbury Bitcoin mine is emitting 70 or even 90 decibels on a nightly basis is like torture, he says. The most spectacular cardiovascular diseases will develop. They have to stop the machines. Health effects have the potential to extend past the human residents of Granbury. Studies have shown that man-made noise pollution harms animals and wildlife, causing oxidative stress and memory loss in rodents, acute anxiety in dogs, and a decrease in forest growth. How do you like that? Wow. Shanice Copenhaver's dog, things have shifted around. What's the dog's name? Persephone. Started going bald and developed debilitating anxiety shortly after the Bitcoin mine began operating 4 blocks away. Directly next door, Tom Weeks' dog, Jack Rabbit Slim, that's some name, started shaking and hyperventilating uncontrollably for hours on end. A vet placed him on the seizure medication, gabapentin, maybe. Docs can tell me. Rosencrantz's chickens stopped laying eggs for months. So my wife stopped laying eggs. All right, holy cow, old-timey joke there. But Rosencrantz's chicken stopped laying eggs for months. Now there's something to it. Obviously, she's living on a farm, large, small, I don't know. But she had to, she's homeschooling, and just as well, we can live at home off of the eggs that our chickens are laying. So that's good news. I don't have to go out to work to earn egg money. But guess what? The chickens stopped laying eggs too. Thanks a lot, Bitcoin. And Jerry and Patricia Campbell's centuries-old oak tree, which had served as the family's hub and protector for generations of backyard family reunions and even a wedding, died suddenly 3 months ago. Thanks a lot. It's nearly impossible to prove the Bitcoin mine directly caused the afflictions of these specific animals and plants. They can't testify, usually. But as the strange anecdotes collect, they've added to the stress of a town that feels under siege from all directions. I've lived in Texas all my life, and I've never seen an oak tree as beautiful as an oak tree. I've never seen an oak tree be beautiful one year and die the next, Jerry Campbell says on his lawn, beneath the tree's gnarled, blackened limbs. It's so strange. Hood County Constable John Shirley has spent months trying to find his own solutions to a problem that at times seems supernatural. As a former member of the Oath Keepers, a far-right militia whose leaders were convicted of seditious conspiracy against the U.S. government, Shirley is a somewhat divisive figure in the town, but lately Shirley has been laser-focused on the mine, an issue he considers apolitical. When you've got Greenpeace supporting the same cause as a former Oath Keeper, that's kind of interesting. What validates Greenpeace in your mind? When I agree with them. Well, at least it's apolitical. But okay, I'm glad you're working together on this one. Well, what weird episode of The Twilight Zone are we in? He says, chuckling darkly. Shirley resigned from the Oath Keepers before January 6, 2021, by the way, due to serious concerns with the direction of the organization, he says. Well, at least there's that. On a listless May morning before the sun has risen, Shirley is sitting in his truck across the road from the mine. He's used to getting up at this hour, as he's been taking decibel readings of the plant around the clock in order to write tickets against the mine's operators for disorderly conduct. Okay. Shirley sticks his recorder out the window, and the numbers on it flicker up and down as the roar washes over it. Eventually, the recorder caps out at 91 decibels, which the CDC estimates as roughly in between the output of a lawnmower and a chainsaw. This level of noise, as the CDC writes, can cause hearing damage after 2 hours of exposure. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which, by the way, the Trump administration and Project 2025 will no doubt be abolishing, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration advises that employees can only work in 90 decibel settings for 8 hours a day, thanks a lot, and are required, when doing so, to wear ear protection. No unprotected work at 90 decibels, apparently. But even with earplugs in, only 8 hours a day. No overtime. And Texas State Penal Code deems any noise above 85 decibels unreasonable. Well, 90 is above that. Over the course of 2024, Shirley has recorded noise above 85 decibels coming from the plant more than 35 times. But what are you going to do? Arrest the boxes? No, arrest the owners. Come on, you know what to do. Technically, there is federal mandate. There is federal mandate. There is no federal mandate. Where are we going with this? It doesn't say, but all it reads is, technically there is federal mandate to regulate noise, which stems from the 1972. So there is a federal mandate to regulate noise stemming from the 1972 Noise Control Act. This was before they got overly clever with the naming, I guess. But it was essentially defunded during the Reagan administration. Oh, I could never have guessed that. My screen has gone blank here, so I can't use my soundboard. Okay, where are you, soundboard? I've been waiting for you. Okay, it was defunded by the Reagan administration. Which is too bad, because if it had been in control, we could have gotten rid of that weird spike in that noise. And we really, now that we have, maybe my editor can help me with this one. All right. Well, at any rate, defunded by the Reagan administration. This leaves noise regulation, you'll never guess, up to the states. Oh, and also cities and counties. New York City, that's right, for instance, has a noise code which officially caps restaurant music and air conditioning at 42 decibels, as measured within a nearby residence. Texas's 85 decibels, in contrast, is by far the loudest state limit in the nation. What? Texas says, it's the loudest in the nation, Texas. Thank you. Okay. Well, that according to Les Blomberg, the executive director of the nonprofit Noise Pollution Clearinghouse. I say Noise Pollution Clearinghouse, in case you were wondering if you need to call them. It is a level that protects noise polluters, not the noise polluted, he says. Need to work on that line. Ultimately, Constable John Shirley can't stop the machines. You could shoot them. I'm just saying. I mean, stand your ground, Constable. But let's see. He can't stop the machines because there is no state law forcing the operator of a noisy machine to turn it off. What if the noisy machine is a gun? Go screw yourself. When Shirley writes a ticket for disorderly conduct, it merely triggers a $500 fine as opposed to jail time or another punitive measure. Hood County can't even pass a relevant noise ordinance law. Only Texas cities, not counties, have the ability to do so. But I guess you have the ability to ride in on a horse and shoot those things. Just saying. Shirley's tickets now add up to a theoretical fine of $17,500. Whoop-de-doo. And counting. This is as against Bitcoin miners. But that number is chump change for Marathon, not that they're paying, I'm sure, which earned $165 million in revenue in the first quarter of 2024 and bragged to shareholders about record earnings. And the company is fighting back. They have requested a jury trial to overturn this low-level misdemeanor, which starts July 8th. So I guess it's underway. I wonder how that's going. At a pretrial hearing in May, the company arrived with a full team of lawyers to bring 2 or 3 full-suited attorneys to a Justice of the Peace Court citation issue. I've never seen that, says Patrick Ryan, a local lawyer who has consulted with Granbury community members about the possibility of a civil nuisance lawsuit. They're coming in with both barrels, which is pretty loud. A representative from Marathon declined several interview requests with Time, saying that the company would refrain from commenting publicly until Constable Shirley's unwarranted citations against the plant have been resolved. As Shirley sits outside the facility recording the pulsating drone, his nostrils flare and his voice rises with impatience. When I was a murder investigator and someone killed somebody, I had the law on my side, he said. With this, it's like I'm swatting at a rhinoceros. A little bit, I guess. Okay. As he reads the decibel levels on his sound meter, a security guard from the facility steps out of his car and snaps pictures of Shirley's truck in the dark. How do you like that? He's surveilling the surveillors. The residents of Granbury feel they've been lied to. In 2023, the site's previous operators, U.S. Bitcoin Corp., constructed a wall around the mine, almost 2,000 feet long, and claimed that they had solved the concern. But Shirley says that the complaints from the community about the sound actually increased when the wall was nearing completion last fall. Since Marathon bought the facility outright in December, its hash rate, or potential computational power, has expanded, or is in fact doubled. A Marathon representative, however, says that their rate of energy consumption has decreased from 225 megawatts of capacity to 115 since the company took ownership of the site. As complaints mounted at the top of 2024, the company contended it did not know about the extent of the sound issues. We are now the owners, but we are not the operator. US BTC, US Bitcoin Corporation, is still the operator. Prior to the purchase, we were not aware of the noise issue. A Marathon representative wrote to Time in an email in January. Now that we own the site and have been made aware of the issue, we are working to gather information and address the situation. Maybe. But documents show that Marathon provided a $67 million loan in May of 2021 to the site's first formal owners, Compute North. To do what? To build out the site's infrastructure. And Marathon's purchase agreement of the site, dated December 15th, 2023, clearly mentions the existence of the $1.9 million sound wall built several months prior. Why do you have a sound wall? I don't know. All right, then I don't know either. As community complaints reached a fever pitch earlier this year, Marathon held a meet and greet on March 29th, Good Friday, which rubbed many people in Granbury's deeply religious community the wrong way. For the handful of people that did show up, Marathon laid out a noise mitigation plan, which included turning off idle fans, moving some containers into liquid cooling by April of 2024, and installing vegetation and trees around the perimeter, which will probably only die anyway because of the noise. By the way, that was interesting for them to choose Good Friday for the. Usually, they end up choosing like a Jewish holiday that I didn't know it was a Jewish holiday, but Good Friday is actually even on most calendars. So it is a very deeply unreligious thing to do, I guess. In a statement emailed to Time in late June, Marathon said that 58 air-cooled containers have been removed from the site and pointed to a roadmap which vows to convert 50% of the site's containers to immersion cooling by the end of the year. A representative for Constellation Energy, which owns the power plant that Marathon connects to, said in a statement that the company is staying updated on Marathon's efforts to respond to the concerns raised by neighbors. We will continue working closely with Marathon as they take actions to reduce their impacts. I'd actually be interested in checking up on the health of the Constellation Energy employees and see what they might have to say, or whether they're all under gag orders or something like that. Marathon says that immersion cooling, in which computers are placed in tubs of oil. I mean, that doesn't sound all that environmentally wise, but okay. Will largely fix the noise problem, but the technique has potential drawbacks, including the difficulty of regularly performing maintenance on a computer submerged in oil, says Kent Draper, the chief commercial officer of the Bitcoin and AI data center operator IREN, I-R-E-N, all caps there. Although it's been around for a long time in the industry, it's just not that widely adopted, he said. It sounds kind of gross, really. Even Marathon expressed skepticism about its ability to convert its many machines to immersion technology in a 2023 year-end SEC report. There is a risk we may not succeed in developing or deploying immersion cooling at such a large scale to achieve sufficient cooling performance, the company wrote. In an email to Time, Marathon wrote, while we are confident in our ability to scale this new technology, it is our obligation as a publicly traded company to identify any potential risks from a financial perspective. Granbury community members are exploring political and legal avenues. A petition against the mine in Granbury and its excessive and unhealthy noise garnered 800 in-person signatures and was brought by representatives to the Texas Republican State Convention in San Antonio in May with the hopes of gaining statewide support for some sort of ban. But two local elected officials, Nanette Samuelson and Shannon Wolf, said they tried to take the floor to stump for the issue but weren't given time to speak. Samuelson's goal is now to pass resolutions in Commissioner's Court prompting state senators to draft legislation. Any statewide legislation is sure to hit significant headwinds because the very idea of regulation at all runs contrary to many Texans' political beliefs. As constitutional conservatives, they have taken our core values and used that against us, says Demetra Conrad, a city council member in the nearby town of Glen Rose. I can't believe that leopard ate your face. How strange. Some community members are also exploring a potential civil nuisance suit against Marathon, in which they would seek an injunction against the company and or damages. One affected woman, Cheryl Shadden, who has medically documented hearing loss, has retained the nonprofit Earth Justice to examine potential litigative routes. Oh, boy. Well, all right. Deputy Managing Attorney Mandy DeRoche says Earth Justice is exploring the possibility of taking its own sound readings near the site. The nonprofit has been involved in several lawsuits against crypto mining companies across the country. Historically, Bitcoin miners go to the cheapest source of electricity with the least amount of regulation, and they do the cheapest thing possible, DeRoche says. It's one of the reasons why noise pollution from crypto mining tends to be so much worse than traditionally operated data center operators. They go, that would bring them probably to places where the local population has the least understanding of or resources with which to defend themselves. So, as Bitcoin continues to gain value, miners are building progressively bigger operations, causing gas plants and other fossil fuel emitters to spring back into action. It is unclear whether states even have the energy capacity to support this new demand. In June, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick tweeted that Texans will ultimately pay the price for the growth of crypto. Oh, he's parting ways with them. And AI data centers, writing that they produce very few jobs. Yeah, you notice? Compared to the incredible demands that they place on our grid. Regardless, Bitcoin lobbying groups are attempting to pass pro-Bitcoin mining bills in state legislatures all across the country, which would exempt similar operations from noise ordinances and local zoning laws. Don't do it. People have reported similar symptoms near Bitcoin mines in Arkansas and Williston, North Dakota. Ultimately, Granbury is just one canary of several in the proverbial mine. And this is an actual mine. What do you know? In the week before this article's publication, 2 more Granbury residents suffered from acute health crises. The first was Tom Weeks, the owner of the hyperventilating dog. That sounds like a sideshow act, but okay. On July 2nd, Weeks, 64, rose after another sleepless night of listening to the mine and realized he couldn't breathe. He was rushed to a Fort Worth hospital where he was diagnosed with a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot blocking his lungs, and hooked up to an oxygen tank. Weeks was supposed to testify against Marathon in the jury trial, but is now physically unable to do so. What do you know? This whole thing is an eye-opener for me into profit over people, Weeks said in a phone call from the ICU. The second person affected was the 5-year-old Indigo Rosenkrantz. On July 6th, she suffered from a seizure and was taken to the emergency room before being routed to a children's hospital in Fort Worth for further testing. Her mother, Sarah, was terrified and now feels she has no choice but to get a second mortgage and move away from the mine. A second one would really be a lot, especially for one house, right? She says, God will provide, though. He always sees us through. Well, I hope so. And I guess there's a correction noted at the bottom, but since we already read the correct version of the information, we are done. I had not expected that one. And just another thing to be wary of. And well, I don't know, maybe another opportunity for some people in Texas to wake up to the leopards gnawing on their faces. Dan Patrick might even be getting it. So who knows? Sometimes in order to make Republicans care about something, you know, you got to stick it right in their eye. And then and only then there'll be advocates for eye health, you know. But if you stick it in their ear after that, then and only then will they care about hearing loss. It's just the way it is down there. Glad we could document it. What a surprise. Amazing. Bitcoin making nothing. Wow. All right, well, that does, in fact, leave us with virtually zero time for anything else. But I do have a few minutes left to fill out the hour. I found something, actually, before I recorded this story. I had seen this, and maybe this is the way to conclude with the end of the show, because it's about Bitcoin sort of also. I guess in case you were wondering, what kind of person does it take to do this to the neighbors and essentially to just use their bodies to cool their machines to make Bitcoin? Well, a real jerk, in case you didn't know. I saw on social media, on Blue Sky. I'm not on Twitter anymore, generally speaking, but okay, whatever. And I saw Molly White, who is a cryptocurrency researcher, as she puts it, and had collected some recent tweets from the founder and CEO of a prominent cryptocurrency company. I never heard of the person or the company, but I think it kind of illustrates who we're dealing with here. There are 4 collected screenshots. It's Ryan Selkis, Selkis. What kind of company? I don't know. The avatar that he uses, you know, on his best day after weightlifting or whatever. The tough, bald guy. Anyway, he has these things to say, just in case you were wondering what kind of person is behind this stuff. Anyone that votes against Trump at this point, he says, can die in a effing fire. Literal war. Literal. It's literal war. I'm a little bit busy, you know, hydrating here, but hold on, it's war. The civil war for the country, he says, started today. And if you are anti-Trump, you are against the men who are willing to fight. Good luck. So, Mr. Macho here. Also wanted you to know that Bolshevism cannot be cured with votes. We must excise the metastatic cancer. Yeah, is that right? Metastatic? Did I say that right when you use it that way? Cancer and the evil of the left by force if necessary. This is why the Second Amendment was and is so important. Do not initiate violence, but if it is brought to your door, finish with violence. And then one last stupid one in which he says, I hate leftists with the fire of 1,000 suns. I'm not a Republican. I'm built different.
war.
Wow, so he tweets under 2-bit idiot. What do you know? And I think that's about right. He's a whole idiot, if you ask me.
From networksradio.com.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, I don't know. I thought that was very telling. There are a couple more, and I guess Molly White's been researching these guys all along. And by the way, he's super anti-immigration, but everyone working at his company on engineering is H-1B visa, in case you were wondering. Time now for Justice Putnam to bring you into the weekend. We'll see you next week.